thoughts from NBA insider Brian Geltzeiler. Brian, welcome. How are you?
Doing?
Good, thank you. All right. I know that the NBA had hoped that it could make some decisions by May 1st. It's backed that up now to May 8th. It has been circulating a lot of information to teams and to players and to the union. I know that they have been worried about being out front with testing and being too advanced before the rest of the nation. They felt like that would be detrimental to even coming back. From what you know and what you've ascertained in reporting the last couple of days, where is the NBA right now?
Well, listen, I think part of the problem that's kind of set in here, Mike, is that Adam Silver, who has been very proactive throughout most of this process, has gotten a little reactive here. Listen, they were ready to open some facilities in some of these states that were doing partial reopenings around May 1st. And he got a lot of blowback and decided, you know what, we can put that off a little bit. When I say reopening, I mean, listen, not more than 4 guys in a facility at a time. Everybody works out individually, proper social distancing, masks. You know, the NBA had set forth guidelines for this, but even that created a little bit of a firestorm. And I do think, and not a public one, but a private one, but I do think at a certain point in time, Silver's going to have to say, listen, you may like it, you may not like it. This is what we are going to do. I'll also say this. The talks about a bubble concept, you know, the fact that Disney is now in the mix for the bubble concept, even more so than Vegas, speaks to the power that the television partners have over the league in terms of reopening and getting a
right.
product.
Now, let's touch on that for a second. Okay, ESPN plays an enormous role in this thing, and ESPN, Disney, the parent company, is in big trouble right now, and their theme parks have been closed for a long time. And if they can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and put this in a Disney theme park as well as put it on TV, that's helpful to Disney. And so that plays MGM, which is also a partner of the NBA's, against Disney a little bit. Who wins, Vegas and MGM or Disney and Orlando?
One thing I could tell you about Adam Silver and the owners, and you understand this, Mike, they are not penny wise and pound foolish. And the money that's getting pumped in through the ESPN partnerships much more meaningful than the money that's pumped in through the MGM partnership.
No question.
So that is where they are going. They are going
Where
to
do
go.
the players are the players 50-50 or do they prefer Vegas?
No, the players are actually 50-50. There is from what I understand, there's like a cauldron of veteran players that feel as though Vegas is problematic just with the young guys there, because ultimately, you know, you're going to go back to hotels are going to be open.
Yeah,
They're
they
not
are
open to the public, but they're going to be open.
Yep.
So you're going to go back there and you're going to have bars loaded with cocktails, and they're certainly going to have
gambling,
gaming tables open.
Yep.
If you want to go play blackjack, play craps, you're going to be able to do that. The distraction level for younger guys in Vegas is going to be so much bigger than it would be if they were in a Disney type of bubble. And listen, let's face it, for ESPN, they're going to probably do this at a lower number for the NBA because they need the rating. I will tell you this, Mike. I think that the rating that the NFL draft did has put all of this on a very different plane, because the NFL draft ratings, as you well know, were through the roof.
Enormous.
And when ESPN saw what they could do during a scenario when you have people that are generally tied to their homes because there's not anything else to do, they're going to want to get something on those TV screens and start raking it.
And they need to do it before the country opens up, because once the country opens up, the numbers aren't going to be the same.
That's correct. And listen, the league already has pushed back into they're not committed to starting in December, but I think they're somewhat content and resolved to do it.
Right.
Because the big thought is this: we'll play a playoff in front of no fans. We don't want to open a new season in front of no fans. So they're willing to push this thing back as far as they have to. And as it was, Steve Koonin at the Sloan Conference, the president of the Hawks, suggested this in a panel about maybe the league is better off from a long-term standpoint, ratings-wise, having the majority of their season going up against Major League Baseball as opposed to going up against NFL and college football as much as they do. Starting on Christmas Day, and we've heard that expression before, people don't start paying attention to the NBA till Christmas Day anyway. So starting on Christmas Day and running your final into mid-late July and potentially early August, may give them a ratings advantage. And you know what? The circumstances have kind of given you that petri dish to go ahead and give it a shot.
one of the things, and we're talking with Brian Geltzeiler, one of the NBA insiders, one of the things that Adam knows, and let's be honest, Adam was out front in front of anybody. He caused the closures in this country. They wouldn't have happened for another 2 weeks if it wasn't for Adam Silver. Adam Silver was the one who closed America. He really did. He did it more than anybody else, more than the president, more than anybody. He closed America. But what he learned, and it's something that you've seen hasn't been the case out of say the White House, is there aren't consensuses in crisis. Crisis is usually one guy's decision. It can't be consensus. There's not time for consensus. Nope. Silver's got to make a decision on the NBA. He can't take a vote on the NBA. The only vote he's got to get, though, is he's got to get one from the Players Association. Where are they on the health issue? What do they need from do they need an airtight, lockdown, foolproof testing system that they haven't seen yet? Or can they live with some of the craziness up in the air stuff that we're looking at right now?
I think they'll live with some up in the air stuff, Mike, under one condition, and that's that there is a plan if someone tests positive. That's the thing, Mike. And you and I have talked about this. What are you going to do if someone tests positive? Now,
if it's one player, you ban them. If it's a team, you're dead.
Well, that's the that's the problem. The problem is that you're going to have to be, and this is where it comes back to the how do you want this thing to play in public?
Yeah, because you got to test every day. You have to test every day.
Every day.
Yes.
You got it. You got to keep testing over and over. You're going to need a huge amount of tests.
Yep.
And listen, if everybody,
they're talking 25,000 tests just for the NBA.
Correct. And if everybody out in society can get a test easily, who cares? Test as much as you want.
That hasn't happened yet. Right.
Hasn't happened yet. Listen, I'm in New Jersey, Mike. It hasn't happened.
Has not happened yet. That's not true. I mean, they're trying to tell you that it has. It hasn't. We all know it hasn't. And the NBA also knows, hey, we want to come back, but we don't want to come back as the bad guys. So, and baseball's made the same point. We can't come back and have a state-of-the-art testing program when America doesn't, because people are sitting home saying, oh, here are these spoiled players, to heck with them. Well, they want to come back and be well-received. They don't want to come back and have people booing them.
More than that, Mike, here's the listen, people's choices in terms of what they're going to look at with the spend their entertainment dollar may be changed in a post-corona world.
You never know.
But Mike, I mean, I'm going to be frank about it. I don't know how I'm going to hurt, and I've been a guy.
I'm not going back in. I'm not going back in an arena again until I know that I can take a pill or get a shot at that makes me whole. Because until then, I will watch it on TV.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed, Mike. Listen, I feel the same way. I'm a guy that would go to 1 or 2 NFL games a year. I'm not going this year.
Listen, I've gone to 10,000 live events in my life. I have gone to enough. I don't need to go to anymore. And I'll tell you, I'm not going. At this age, I'm not going until I know that it's safe. And a lot of people are going to make the same decision. They're not going to get back on a subway. They're not going to get back on a train. They're not going to go to Yankee Stadium or Madison Square Garden or, the Forum until the fact that, they know that it's safe. And that's going to be a big issue. Now, hopefully, they're working hard. There's billionaires and scientists working all over the world now to come up with a drug, so hopefully they will. What do you think next week? Do you think you hear something from the NBA next week? And when is it impossible? When is there a drop-dead date, or is there no drop-dead date for the NBA?
Well, you say drop-dead date. I think.
I mean, a date where they say we're done with this season.
Well, I personally think you're going to have if you can't get players into facilities to start working out, because keep in mind, Mike, and we've talked about this also. You're going to have a minimum of 2 weeks.
Yeah, I've heard 25 days, 25 days, yeah.
Right, for guys to be able to come back in and get themselves back into NBA game shape. Right. Now, the league may say, sorry, you're not getting 25 days. You're going to get 18 days, something like that. But you're going to need a runway.
Yeah, minimum 2 weeks. Minimum 2 weeks.
Which tells me that if you don't have this thing started by July 1st, done. That to me is the drop dead date, and it gives them less than 2 months. And as much as you think that's a lot of time, it's not a lot of time.
Where are now? You know that a LeBron James knows his clock is ticking. He knows he can win this year. He wants to win. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, you want to play this year. If you're the Clippers or the Lakers, you want to play this year. The rank and file, if they vote, what's the vote in the NBA? Is it close, or are the players overwhelmingly want to finish the season?
I think you would get a good sized majority that want to finish the season. I think you'd have a smaller. The guys that don't want to finish the season, Mike, are the guys that have nothing to play for the rest of the year. The large majority of the guys in the league are still competitive and want to go out there and have the ability to play for something. Where I think you have guys that aren't all that interested is, why am I going to go invest 18 days to go play what's potentially one game in a single elimination tournament for me to to potentially qualify to try to get in the playoffs? Listen, I think what the challenge for the league right now is, listen, it'd be very easy to stop the season and say we're just going to start with the playoffs, but I think they want to do something where they can still involve every team.
Well, here's a couple of things that came up. Let's discuss it for a second. We're talking with Brian Geltzeiler. Here's the thing that I've heard, and it makes plenty of sense from this standpoint. They can't play the whole season out. We know that.
No.
Now, if you look at the standings, they don't have to because they're not that close. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. They say they need, what they told me is 11 days of individual drills and 14 days of serious head-to-head scrimmage to get ready for the postseason. Now, let's say they cut that down to 7 days and 8 days, 15 days, 8 of scrimmage, 7 of individual drill, okay? Individual drill, they don't want to scrimmage each other, so why not at least play a couple of games at the end of the season, because you got to play against each other anyway. Now you are bringing back the bad teams. You got to give them some incentive that if they do something right, do you then come back and play the last 3 games on the calendar, on the schedule, and then have a elimination tournament that is everybody not in the top 16, or take 14 teams and then say 2 teams earn slots out of the loser bracket and let those teams play off for a week to see which 2 get into the winner bracket? I've heard something like that could be possible.
What I had heard was essentially that no more regular season games get played.
So they're going to scrimmage against each other and they're not going to count.
Correct.
Okay.
Everybody's going to get 2 exhibition games.
Okay.
It's essentially exhibition games.
Okay.
Get out there, get yourself against another team, and then I heard a single elimination tournament. If you are a top 7 seed, you're in the playoffs. And what this allows is that those top 7 seeds buy themselves anywhere from 4 to 6 extra days to be able to play more, work out more together, get themselves.
And then the 8th team has to fight to keep its slot.
The 8 team's got to fight to keep its slot. So 8 through 15, okay, they play a single elimination tournament, which would be as exciting as hell, Mike.
That would that would work. That would be very exciting. There's no question. Yes,
it'd be great. But some of the pushback you get from players is that, so I'm going to train all this time.
Right.
I'm going to come back, play 2 exhibition games, potentially just to play 1 game. Well, yeah, that may happen.
Well, yes, especially when you realize that the Nets might bring back Kevin Durant to play that game. You know, something like that.
Why not? Right?
Yeah, and put them in the playoffs.
Yes, if I'm Kevin Durant and I'm healthy enough, and by the way, that's, I believe we're at 7 right now, so they would be in any way.
Oh, they would be. Okay.
Orlando's at 8. So the Nets are at 7 right now. They would squeeze in there, and all of a sudden, how about that for Milwaukee? How about that for Milwaukee, Mike? Or no, I'm sorry, number 2's Toronto. How about the defending champions,
you get
Toronto
Durant.
Raptors,
you get Durant.
who didn't get Durant last year to win a title? How about a great story about that? And come in a first-round series and have Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets. It'd be wild. And again, there's so many.
And then would the playoffs be normal after that? Once we start the playoffs, when we have 8 teams, we're back to normal playoffs?
I think that is a big bone of contention right now among the league. Listen, one thing that Silver doesn't want here is he doesn't want to play off. The history of this league, Mike, as you know, is so important. Listen, I saw you were on The Last Dance last week talking about the Knicks from the 90s. I mean, you understand the history of this sport. The history of this sport is so important to Adam Silver and the owners that they don't want an asterisk next to this year's champion. No one wants it. Listen, LeBron doesn't want to go ahead and win a title.
No, he wants a real title. He wants a real title. Yeah.
He wants a real title. So that's where I think it's finding the time to be able to do it. But I think what they're going to have to sacrifice is rest in between games. I think ultimately you're going to have to play a whole ton of back-to-backs in the playoffs to get all the games in. I know that the one thing they are resolved to doing is playing the first round as a 5-game series instead of a 7-game series, because for years the league was like that anyway. So to be able to cut those games off is okay. But I think they want to make sure that this year's champion doesn't have an asterisk next to it. And it's really important. So I think they're going to try to find a way to get all those games in, even if they're obviously playing multiple games a day at multiple locations. And there's going to be back-to-backs where you would normally maybe have a travel day You'll play a back-to-back, get one off, maybe play 2-3 in a row because you're playing in a neutral location, get one off, and I think they'll probably do it that way. There will be a couple of off days sprinkled there, but a whole lot of back-to-backs in the playoffs. But let's face it, Mike, after all this time that players that haven't been playing, there's no reason they can't come out and play playoff back-to-back.
Well, do you think there's a chance there's Vegas in the West and Orlando in the East, and those are the two sites? Is that possible when we create two bubbles?
I think it is possible. I think that the one thing you look at there are the costs involved. I think that may be more expensive.
I mean, the MGM says they can set it up with their the layout out there. They can actually have 3 hotels connect, and they can have all the courts inside the convention center, and they would be perfectly set up. They'd never have to go outside.
Yes, they absolutely could do that. And I think that kind of bubble system would work very well at MGM. But I also know that doing things at UNLV is something that's very much on the radar as well. Because you have
it right there. I mean, it's within walking distance. You have Thomas and Mack right there, so it's right there. So.
Correct. And if you're putting players on buses and loading docks, and you're putting them on a bus at a loading dock at a hotel and taking them off a bus at a loading dock at a UNLV, it's fine. So I don't. Even though MGM has the ability to do that, I don't know if the league necessarily needs that. It's just a question. Because keep on thinking about it. At one point or another, you're gonna have to gather everybody. At least
and no media. The plan is no media. Even announcers would be off site doing games. There'd be no media. They want to keep their crews counting officials down to 35 people.
Yes,
that's it.
And
even the announcers will be off site doing it off monitors,
which I think is great. Listen, you want to keep as many people safe as possible. One of the big things, and I know Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN, had this earlier in the week, but I had heard this before that as well, and it is the big concern is for the assistant coaches that are older. You have head coach Alvin Gentry's in his upper 60s.
Right.
Greg Popovich in upper 60s.
Absolutely.
Older guys.
Absolutely.
You do not want to put these guys at added risk. And by bringing younger media in,
there's been talk that Popovich wouldn't even go.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, because here's the other thing that's happened, Mike, and you have an event like this, cataclysmic event, not only in our society but in the entire world, and things will change going forward. You can do this media availability via Zoom, via video conferencing. It's easy these days, Mike. And so you really don't.
Oh yeah, you can have the press
there.
Conferences after the game easily. I mean, that's not even hard. It could be that could change. They could even, if they wanted to, they could include fans' questions. They could do anything they want. I mean, they could
anything they wanted.
Anything that could change radically. We're talking with Brian Geltzeiler, the NBA insider. I know that the Silva has been frustrated by the timetable, and that he's made a lot of talk this week. He's made May 8th a hard date. Do you think they need to at least internally have come to some conclusion by May 8th, or you don't think it's that hard a date?
I don't. I think in terms of the conclusion, it's one step at a time. Are we going to open facilities in the states that are starting to open up things a little bit? That's the May 8th decision. In terms of what they have to do, I don't think he has a hard date right now. I think he's going to use the time that he has to gather more information. Keep in mind, you bump up against next season. If you create that Christmas Day deadline, you buy yourself more time. And right now, Silver wants more time. But I think you made a point earlier in this interview that I think is going to be very important here for Adam Silver. Adam Silver has done a fantastic job. And he had one of the biggest challenges the commissioners ever had 4 months into his tenure when he had the problem with Donald Sterling, and he handled it as well as anybody could ever handle it.
Yes.
But he's fantastic at making everybody happy, Mike. And I think you said it earlier, and it's important to repeat. You can't when you have
there's no consensus in these crises. He has to make a decision. And Stern
and
would have had no problem. Stern would have had no problem making a decision. None.
And I don't think Silver will either.
No, he showed it when he made the last decision. You know that he handled that. He did. He handled that well.
He knew that people were going to be very unhappy with what they had to do. And by the way, the fact that the NBA is out in front of this in the way that they are and is taking the leadership position has everything to do with the relationship with China. Adam Silver was concerned about the coronavirus in mid-January when it should have been more on the radar of the federal government and wasn't for whatever reason. Adam Silver was worried about staff that he had in offices in China because the NBA has operations there. So the NBA has been out in front of this from the jump. And I do think Silver, when it it comes time to be decisive, as long as he, and he's a guy, listen, a legal background, Mike, that as long as he can give what he believes are clear and concise reasons for doing what he does, I think we'll have decisions made, and I think we'll have a decision on what's going to happen with this NBA season between now and June 1st.
What about there being no draft? How is that going to impact things?
I think you're going to have a draft. I think the reason they haven't canceled the draft yet is just because they don't want to be able to cancel the draft without necessarily having a date to reschedule the draft. The combine, forget about it. No one needs the combine. I don't know that it's necessary under the best of circumstances. So there's going to be no combine. And at a certain point in time, they'll find a way to do a lottery via Zoom. That's not the hugest deal in the world. There will be a draft. The draft is probably going to be like it always is, a week or two after the season ends, and they'll probably push back to September. They'll have the draft, and we'll probably have no summer league for this year. But there's definitely, to me, I've not heard anything in terms of not having a draft. They plan on having a draft. It's just they don't want to cancel this draft without scheduling a new one, and they can't schedule a new one without knowing when the season's going to resume.
And they obviously haven't been able to, especially with players and that's a big part of the NBA draft is the international players, and they obviously haven't been able to do anything with international players this year.
You better have a good scouting department, Mike. If you didn't deploy a scouting department, and that's a place where you chose to cut costs, you were going to pay a price this year. This is on the whole. We know there's scouts flying all over the world. This is on the homework that your personnel department and your scouting department should have done last summer, early during this season, to be able to know who's out there and what's out there internationally. And if you didn't do that, if that's not a place where your organization chose to spend money, you're going to have a little bit of problem, and maybe those are guys you're going to have to avoid the draft because you don't know enough about them. It's a big challenge to these personnel departments. But if you're properly prepared and you do your homework, and you're Daryl Morey in Houston, and you're traveling internationally on a frequent basis to look at players, you're Lawrence Frank with the LA Clippers, and you're traveling constantly to look at players, you're going to be fine. If you haven't done that, or you've pulled back on scouting, you're flying blind here, and you're going to have to kind of proceed accordingly and maybe avoid players that you don't know enough about, even if that's the right consensus pick.
What month will the NBA final be played in?
The NBA final, I think, is going to be played in August and may run into September. I don't think they're going to push much past Labor Day. They don't want to be up against the NFL. And if they're going to start Christmas, they need some semblance of a meaningful offseason. So I think we'll probably see it all. I think we'll see a final in August that may potentially spill into early September.
Very good chance the NFL doesn't start till October 15th anyway. I mean, that's been rumored about. They're gonna put out a schedule this week that starts September 7th, but I don't think that will happen. I think they will begin October 15th, if I had to guess.
Same reason we gave for the NBA, Mike.
Yep.
They want people in the stands. The NFL, listen, you think about that, the opportunities, and granted, TV money is the large majority of what they're bringing in anyway, but they want their gate ready.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the other sports, it hurts worse, as you know. But let me ask you this. It's been a tough year for the NBA because they lost, as you said, $300 million over the China incident, at least $300 million in revenue. They've had a tough year now with the interruption this year. How tough has it been on the NBA overall to the teams this year?
It's been very difficult. Listen, one of the things that kind of flew under the radar when at the first 2 weeks of the league being suspended in late March was they had to increase that credit line from $600 million to $1.2 billion. And I have it confirmed that there were three organizations, and I don't have which ones, so I don't want to mention their names without confirming because it's a big thing to say. But the organizations weren't going to make payroll without being able to increase that credit line. They've also three organizations. They've also inquired, Mike. They've also inquired to what if we have to go higher?
I've heard they've already gotten it approved.
Yes, and they've gotten it correct, and they've gotten that approved. That they're able to go higher if they have to. But that tells you everything you need to know. And that's going to also affect free agency next year. Listen, the guys, last year was a free agency bonanza, and the guys that went out there and got their money ought to be very, very grateful because the cap is going down this year. It is not going to be any kind of big free agency bonanza this year, and there's going to be teams that are hurting, are frankly hurting. And so it's going to be very interesting to see. But the league has taken huge hits financially here this year. It's been a major, major step backwards, and one that you're not going to recover in just 1 year. It's going to take a couple of years for some of these teams to get back on their feet.
All right. Thanks very much, Brian. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Always my pleasure, Mike.
Thank
Take
you.
care, pal.
Brian Geltzeiler, NBA Insider.